excited to be here today, and I'd like to ask the panel to come up. So if you'd like to make your way up onto the stage. Thank you. Please. So just to set the scene, global expertise, local talent. It really is hospitality's balancing act. And I think in a world where hospitality knows no borders, the UAE stands in a unique crossroads. With the UAE now hosting one of the richest hospitality markets in the world, 25% growth in the industry by 2030, 40 million new visitors staying in hotels here in Dubai alone by 2031. But with over 200 nationalities calling this nation their home, we have a microcosm of diversity right on our doorstep. Yet as we strive to build a thriving hospitality industry, we face a critical challenge. How do we nurture, elevate local Emirati talent while harnessing the rich tapestry of global expertise? Today, along with my colleagues, we'd like to delve into this delicate balancing act. We'll explore how the innate hospitality ingrained in Emirati culture can be transformed into a powerful workforce and lead a commercial hospitality sector. We'll discuss strategies, actions to inspire the next generation, break down the silos, and create pathways for Emiratis to shine on the global scale. So just to ask my panelists, just like to introduce yourself, Shaikha.
Shaikha and Nowais, thank you all for attending our panel today. I work for Rotana Hotels. I'm a VP in charge of owner relationships and a board member in Roches. I'm very pleased to be here and share my thoughts with you today, Georgette.
Thank you very much. Werner.
Thank you. My name is Werner Anzinger. I'm the channel manager for Mandarin Jumeira and the area vice president for Dubai, Qatar, and Egypt. Been with Mandarin for 27 years, so I've been a kind of a living legend by now, I would say. And I was very excited to share my experiences on this panel.
Perfect. And Aseem.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Aseem Kapoor, and I run a company called Arc People Solutions. We do everything which is related with people because that's what we're passionate about. And I think development of young talent is something that we really focus on. So I'm really looking forward to interacting with my colleagues on this panel.
Fantastic. A really warm welcome to you all. So just that first question then, how can we change this perception of the hospitality industry, and maybe really starting at that level of school leavers, and inspire young Emiratis to see it as a viable and vibrant career?
We had a meeting earlier today with the Minister of Economy, His Excellency Abdullah bin Tog, and he mentioned something that is very interesting to me, and I think it's very important to be for hospitality to be part of the curriculum at a very early age, from primary, secondary, up to being in university, because perception it varies from family to family, but knowing how much you contribute as an Emirati to this sector is very important. And it's very important for the new generation to be aware of their contribution to this industry.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, I think clearly from our point of view, I think it's success stories. I think we need a success story of, especially where we are in the luxury hospitality, of having really an Emirati where we not only look at Dubai itself, but having somebody who also can work in London, in Paris, in the global cities, and then comes back to Dubai. And really it's inspiring. I think we see it in sports sometimes when we have one superstar coming out of a country and you have a generation of followers coming afterwards. I think we're really looking to develop this now, and I think it's big on my to-do list of making sure I can I can take an Emirati and getting towards an executive, but not only here in Dubai, but really give the opportunity to be in London, in Paris, New York, etc., and then also to come back thereafter.
Great, thank you. Aseem?
I think the way I've always looked at it, it's always seemed to be a bit at an odds with each other, right? So if you really look at the Emirati culture, right, and Shaikha would, kind of, I'm sure, 100% agree. I think hospitality is inbuilt, right? It's kind of, it's something that is steeped in the culture. It comes very, very naturally. And I think after having lived in Dubai for 17 years, I've been at the receiving end of that hospitality at my friends' and colleagues' homes and everything. But somehow, when it has to transpire into and kind of move into being a career, that's where a kind of a block starts to come in, right? So everybody's really hospitable, but hospitality as a career and its perception really kind of needs a bit of a facelift, if you really ask me. And to Shaikha's point, I think it starts, and I think you also mentioned earlier, I think not just school leavers, I think it needs to go into the schools, right? I think it needs to happen at that level where I think the introduction of hospitality, which is not just a part of the warp and weft of how society in the Emirates works, but also how the economic engine and how the commercial engine works, I think it needs to start at the school level where people start to learn and understand the importance of it, and then kind of, collaborate at a bigger picture with the ministry, with the right kind of departments, with hotels, with leaders like, like my colleague here, where, that mindset is there of saying, okay, we got to do something about it, right, rather than just be talking about it. So I think the seed needs to be laid at the schooling level, and kind of then from there start to build up, right? I mean, that's something that kind of, I always felt was something that perhaps could be done. I don't know what you...
Look, I think one of the things that we do as well, and we're very lucky as a country to get support from the government. So Nafis, once Nafis was introduced, it helped a lot, and it encouraged a lot. It encouraged a lot of Emiratis to join the sector, and the hotel sector particularly. And it's very important as well for hotels to employ the right people, the right candidates with the right personalities, and have the right attitude towards the sector, because they will be the perfect role, and they will be an example for all Emiratis, to all travelers that visit the UAE from around the world. So it's very important that we have that as part of our culture of employing and training as well. One of the things that we are also working on is not to theoretically deliver trainings to different employees that come from different nationalities. They need to know more about our culture. They need to know more about our identity, but they have to live it. So we're engaging with a small company in Abu Dhabi. It's an Abu Dhabi-based company called The Knot. So they are a group of locals that are very proud of our culture and our identity, to deliver this message to our colleagues, because not many of people who come and work here know much about our culture. So once they know more about the culture and more about UAE, they will be able to understand those perceptions as well and know how to deal with them.
So interesting. We're saying this is an education and a training and development on both sides. So it's training and developing our team members within the hospitality sector. And Werner, any examples?
Because living it is very different than theoretically delivering something. If you live it and you show examples of how we deal with people, how the type of cuisine, they will be able to understand and engage very quickly with our Emiratis.
Perfect, thank you. So anything from your side, Werner, that you're doing as an organization for developing, training people within the local area?
Clearly, I think for us, I think what we challenge, we have to make hospitality a little bit more sexy again as such. I think we're up against the big names, Emirates, with Emirates Airlines, Emirates MBD, where, Museum of the Future you mentioned before, where we're really up against some very big players. So we have to make it very exciting. and obviously some of my former employees here, they know we have made hospitality very exciting of what we have done in Jumeira, and we can see that there is a path moving forward. But it is not only a problem in the UAE, it's a global problem of how do we convince parents that this is actually a great career? Because it doesn't come across as great anymore. It used to be great, but I think it has really shifted, and I think that shift of everybody has to go to university, nobody's literally working in a trade anymore, I think that is something we have to work very hard on, and I think it has to be a little bit more, as I said, sexy can be small things where we're not as stiff anymore as used to be. Maybe my cherry socks give a little bit of a hint where we're trying to go to, but it has to be a little bit more exciting and not as, as stiff. There has to be more freedom, and I think what they're looking for is to be individuals in what to do, whilst being able to work in a team. I think if we can really foster this, and I think we can see glimpses in Dubai with local-born restaurants now, Ofali Brothers, Moonrise, etc. I think there's some great successes coming already, and it's really building on those.
So we feel that families have an impact, but we can also have an impact.
I have a story to tell, Georgette.
Please.
A month ago, I had a joint session with our chairman, and it was a mini masterclass for young Emiratis, and it was done in collaboration with the UAE Supreme Council for Motherhood and Childhood in Abu Dhabi. So we got asked a lot of interesting questions. One of the questions was related to ESG and what do we do as hotels when it comes to this particular area. So she was 8 years old, very young for someone that is at a very young age and has a lot of knowledge about ESG. It impressed me. So I actually organized a behind-the-scene session for her with our director of health and safety back in corporate office, which was done, I think, a couple of days back in one of the hotels, where she actually saw upfront what we do as a hotel when it comes to this area. So having or engaging kids or students at a very early age to the industry and showing them, making them feel what we actually deliver is very important.
So as early as 8 years old, it's
Yes.
an incredible phenomenon, and I think maybe one that we haven't.
And this is something she will remember forever.
Exactly. And as you say, I think we often think about talking to potential students aged 16, 17, maybe 18, but inspiring that younger generation for the industry as young as 8 years old in primary schools, in secondary schools. So what is it that we can do? You're taking them behind the scenes.
I think grabbing the right opportunities. So this was an opportunity that came to me. I could have easily let go of it, but I chose to take her on and show her what we actually do. And I'm sure she's going to share this experience with a lot of her students, a lot of her friends, and this will move on.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I see.
No,
from
I
your
think
side.
I think it's such a valid point, right, that Shaikha raises, because I think nurturing young talent and doing it in a different way is what kind of needs to become the norm, right? Now, I always believed it's hospitality industry I completely love, right? It runs in my veins, I feel. But it has very traditional mindset in its approaches of talent development and growth of people and everything. Everybody needs to do their path. Everybody has to grow the ranks. Everybody needs to put in the hour, which is important. But I'm saying that we're also dealing now with a generation that is so fast changing, right? We're talking about an 8-year-old who knows about ESG. We're talking about, I think the previous panel said it was 4-year-old who was asking for the Wi-Fi kind of, password. So if our training methodologies and our educational methodologies don't evolve and change, we will always struggle with creating that engagement where they will see it as a career, right? And something that Werner said, right? I mean, kind of, again, in hospitality, we love to tell people what to do. This is where you'll work. This is where shift you will do. This is where, you got to come. You got to live here. You got to eat here and everything. And I think till the time that dynamic doesn't change, where it becomes a choice-driven thing, where people feel that, okay, this is an industry where I can be myself and I can then create an impact, I think we will continue to struggle to at least kind kind of engage and attract that young talent. Because the young talent of today, it's a new generation. I don't even know which generation it is. It's Gen Alpha now, I think, which is now coming into the workforce very soon. And they are kind of, of a completely different mindset. So I think doing a deep dive review of our educational methodologies, how traditional are we in those, and really breaking the barriers with those, and then looking internally within the industry to say, are we stuck in our old ways of training and kind of, developing people, or is there something different that can be done, right? Like one of the things that I always felt I struggled with was when we created these young talent development programs within an organization, and we would always create a separate stream for, okay, this is for the Emirati nationals. And I would always say, why? I said, the minute we create a separate stream, we are putting it into a silo. We are creating a kind of a thing which causes issues on both sides, right? So it's done with the right intentions, but I think it kind of ends up having an impact which is not conducive to how we want the industry to run, especially in an environment like Dubai, where it is so cosmopolitan, everybody works together. So I think some of those I think some of those kind of traditional mindsets, I think we need to question ourselves on and change.
So moving away from siloing, retaining and recruiting.
Yeah, I think one of the keys, we don't treat it as a statistic. We have to employ X amount of employees, and then we tick that box, and it's done. I do believe that we do a lot of management training programs called Rising Fan, but I do believe, as more succinct and more said here, I think we should create a Rising Fan program for Emiratis, because that is home that actually takes them to different cities, and then they come back. I think that would be a far more enriching experience, but also far more attractive when you speak to the parents and say, okay, that's what we're actually going to do. That's going to be the outcome afterwards, if the performance is given, of course. But I can see that something like this would be far more impactful, obviously working with the school together or after school, to be able to offer some places whereby we can do this one. Because it's not only tourism coming into Dubai, but it's also the UAE tourism going outside to Europe, which is massive and of very interest for a lot of hotels to capture this market, and this could help in both ways.
But is it also linked to not just hiring, but retaining, and retaining the right talent? And what is it that each one of you is employing to be able to retain? So we're saying hiring the right talent is absolutely important. We're saying not siloing is important. But what are we doing to retain that talent, inspire that talent, and not lose that talent?
Trying maybe to find ways to show them a clear career development plan is a very important way of keeping them. So I think if they have a clear career development path, it will allow them to foresee or envision where they will get in the company. And spending on education as well. Education is very important. Having them shadow people that will give them time as well, people that will embrace, adopt them and show them the way. It's very important, because especially with this people, millennials and the generation X and Y and Z, they're very impatient. Yeah. They look for quick results, and they won't wait as much as us. I come from the 80s generation, so I'm very patient. But the generation that comes after that, they're not. They're very impatient. And that's why you have to keep up with how they think. You have to keep up with, you have to show them that, you'll embrace their ideas in a way that would also help the company sustain.
Perfect. So
it's true they are impatient. I do agree that they're impatient, but I think what we generally do, and I think it doesn't matter if it's wherever the colleagues are from, I think it's always, I think, to be very clear what the expectations are. I always say at Mandarin Oriental, we generally can create the world's greatest platform for anybody to be successful. If you would have worked at Mandarin Oriental for 2-3 years, you generally will find a job. But also outsourcing the career to us is not an option. I think everybody's responsible for their own career. We give the framework and the platform. And I think this conversation I have with all of my youngsters from all over the world, and I think that is also something they have to be fully aware of, that this is not something we cannot make you successful if you don't want to be.
But also, I think it's our job to be able to identify the potential in those people. It is our job to know
agree.
their capabilities, to know how we can grow them. Because if we don't, then we fail as well as organizations.
I think, I mean, for me, the pathway to retaining them starts with asking them to say, what is it that they're looking for? I just feel that, again, it always ends up being kind of a group of Gen X's, people with a lot of experience, sitting in a room and deciding what they think this generation will want. And I always say, well, let's go out and ask them. Let's kind of do focus groups and everything and really identify what's important to them. And sometimes we may be just completely wowed out of, because we would be looking at it from a completely different perspective whilst they would bring in a new perspective. And then identification, putting those kind of frameworks in place where, they get the option to perform, we can identify the talent, we identify their potential, and then find that balance between how we support them, yet put the onus of the responsibility and the accountability with a support mechanism saying, well, this is how you can grow, and if you don't do X, Y, Z, this is a whole lot of potential that you have in yourself that you can lose, right? So I think it's a bit of a combination of the things that we've been talking about. I don't think one strategy in itself can be super successful, but I think what it does require is like different personalities, different people, different organizations, whether it's educational, whether it's hospitality, whether it's government, all coming together to really make it happen and kind of really question some of the things that hold us back, right? Yeah.
So as you say, bringing as many parties into that as possible.
But also maybe showing those Emiratis that we're not biased. They have to earn the position they're in. They have to earn the scholarship or the opportunities we're giving. It's not that because they're Emirati we're biased because we need to tick a box and get them in. No, they have to be wanting to be there.
So again, taking away from that siloing. So we're coming up, I think, with some potential actions here that each and every one of us in this room today can really drive forward. And is one of that about giving up our time and inspiring young people as young as 8, from the example you've shared with us today, Shaikha, on the previous panel, the age of 4, is really to give up that time, go into schools, talk to young people about the careers that are available.
I think if we want to make a genuine impact, if we're serious about it, then that's something we all as people who've been working in the industry and are really passionate about it will have to do. Otherwise, it will boil down to lip service, right? I mean, at the end of the day, then I think everybody talks the talk, but we have to question ourselves, when are we gonna start walking the talk as well, right? Because if it's time that is what is needed to bring that change in the future, then that's something that we all as an industry will have to collectively be open to giving, right? So yeah, it's I think, yeah.
Definitely linked to that time. And I think the other emphasis that we're hearing here is not to silo. Okay, we're trying to create and again inspire people to come into the hospitality industry. So losing that silos and stop ticking the boxes is another clear action point for us.
Yeah.
And also for our teams within.
Because NAFA subsidy will not last forever, I'm sure.
A great point raised. It's there, as you say, at the current time. It helps, but it's not about that being the route to success. It is very much about inspiring a younger generation to come in, want to be passionate about going into, and as you raised as well, Werner, about going into global careers.
Yeah, I think we're very good on over-promising. I think that's something we're very good at, but it's delivering. But I think sometimes this hard talks and this sometimes hard laugh to say, okay, this is all possible. But I always, especially I work with a lot of youngsters and I do book clubs with youngsters. So we actually read books together and then we discuss it. And it's a very refreshing thing to do because it gives me a different point of view of where they are and how they see things. but also it makes them realize there's more to it than just, just coming to work. I think because the leadership aspect of working with people, and our industry is all about the people, is far more complicated than achieving a task. Because this expertise, you have to really work for it. And I think that one thing we always see very clearly as well, I think, explaining the difference that there's a lot of people that are very interested in having a great career, but who's really committed? And I think that is the big question where we can see, are you really committed putting in the learning, the efforts to make sure you have a great career? Doesn't matter being Emirati or international, but clearly I think for us my commitment will definitely be to create a Rising Fan program which is designed for Emiratis, but not only in Dubai. That either be it in the GCC or going outside and having one exposure in one of the major capital cities of the world as well. I think that would, trigger a little bit more excitement.
And then for the long term, it's not just about those individuals being committed to us and committed to our industry. It's about us being committed to them. So that continual development.
And I just feel that perhaps the commitment to engage goes even before the school element, which goes to their parents. I think maybe that aspect needs to kind of be looked at, but that do we need to get into the communities with the families where we kind of talk to them about it and everything and make a mark there, right? I mean, kind of get them to understand it better, because I think perhaps the young generation would love to get into it, but perhaps they're held back by family/social pressure and so on and so forth. So is there education required at that level, and perhaps should we be kind of, because again, I think there's so much that the UAE government, the Dubai government kind of does to create opportunities. I just feel sometimes a mindset of privilege tends to set in, and that's where it kind of becomes this mindset of saying, well, they got to develop me because, well, they have a quota to hit. But then am I really committed, like Werner said? I mean, that's the big question mark, right? So just to kind of make sure that the privilege is not something that kills the potential. Engagement at the family level perhaps is something that we should kind of be focusing more on, right? I mean,
Okay. So if the audience were asked for each one of you to come up with what do you feel is the one action or the two actions that each and every one in this room today can walk out to make a difference in relation to, as you say, that inspiring talent to come into the hospitality industry. And Shaikha, what would be the action that you would recommend that everybody here today takes away?
I think being able to determine the potential and whether a newcomer or something that's already been with the company, whether it's an Emirati or a non-Emirati, and developing and embracing this talent and appreciating it is very important.
Yeah. Thank you. Werner?
For me, it's very much seeing hospitality as a great career choice. I think all of us parents, I think, are equally guilty of, the question starts very early, of which university are my children going to go to? And it's very rarely that somebody's really focused on hospitality. I think that is something that has to be looked at, and I think there is a big responsibility of looking at this. If the parents don't work in hospitality, it's very unlikely that the kids will end up in a career choice like this.
Perfect. Thank you.
I mean, from my perspective, I would say, go out and partner or become partners with organizations that can open doors for you to go into schools and, educational institutes where you can go and inspire. And secondly, avoid silos at all costs wherever you can within your organization. Don't create completely separate development programs. Yes, you can have additional focus, but don't have separate policies. This is for Emiratis, this is for expatriates, and don't have separate benefits. I mean, try and create that cohesive environment that automatically, over the years, will lead to a buildup of a cohesive workforce. So that's it.
Thank you all very much. And ladies and gentlemen, as we draw what I think has been a very enlightening discussion to a close, I'd like to express my heartfelt thanks to our distinguished panelists today. Your insights have been invaluable in unpacking what are the complex dynamics of what we face today. We face it today within the world of hospitality globally. We face it within the world of hospitality here in the UAE. And it is a complex one to nurture local talent and leverage that global expertise in the UAE's hospitality sector. So, Shaikha, Aseem, and Werner, thank you for sharing that wealth of experience and your forward-thinking perspective. We can be inspired by 8-year-olds and 4-year-olds getting into schools, doing things differently. And again, your contributions have shed some light on what we can all achieve today. But I think we need to remember, in a nation that is home to over 200 nationalities, we have a unique opportunity to create a hospitality model that is global in its outlook, yet deeply rooted in local culture. The effort needed in order to match our industry's expectation needs to be addressed, as has been pointed out by the panel, by all of the key players. The public actors, the private corporations in hospitality and education and training. Some ambitious goals can be achieved as long as we do this jointly and work together with stakeholders. So let's embrace the diversity as our strength and work together to position the UAE as a beacon of hospitality excellence on the world stage. Thank you all for being part of this crucial conversation, and let's carry these insights forward and turn them into actions. You've heard some great action points there, and I think if we all walk out of this room today and take on at least one, we're going to make the difference. The future of the UAE hospitality industry is bright, and it's in our hands to shape it. So thank you all very much indeed.